Hello all, Alison here, welcome back to Words and Pictures for some more tag time. I've pulled out some of the backgrounds we created with Distress Inks on the gel plate. That was quite a while ago, so I will link to that in the description below. If you haven't seen it, take a look at how we created these gorgeous splotchy backgrounds. And I'm thinking of having a play with these grassy stem stencils, which in July 2025, if that's when you're watching, you'll know are brand new. If you're watching further down the line, that's when these came out. And I think these grassy stems might look quite nice on these sort of, some of them when I was creating them, I was thinking in terms of landscapes, meadows, fields, kind of that sort of thing. So I'm thinking of some fairly simple stenciling today. I think I just want to have a play because, as I say, these are still fairly new to me. I haven't created that much with them yet, so it'll just be a nice chance for me to have a play with layering and looking at ways I want to create with these. I think I'm going to start with this one. I keep coming back to it, so let's do it. And I think I'm going to start with just some simple inking, and hopefully that'll give me something strong enough. If not, I can come back in and work again. I've got both inks and oxides on the mat, yeah, and we might go to paint as well, because these backgrounds are deliciously splotchy, but therefore quite strong, quite present, quite textural. So ink might be enough to work with that background, or I might want to strengthen what I'm stenciling by using some paint. So this is going to give me a really subtle effect where I can still see splotches underneath, and that might be something that's really quite pleasurable. I'm starting with Rusty Hinge, and obviously we're going over some fairly rusty areas. I think probably Rusty Hinge was involved in the original prints that we did. So I'm going to highlight that with something a little darker, probably some walnut stain, and just move that in as well. Not in all the same places, just adding some depth maybe to the lower half of each of those grassy stamens. Let's have a look what we've got. So yeah, quite a nice subtle background stem. I want to add a little bit more bushiness down here, so I'm going to relayer it. Going to take the stem, line that up with the stem here, and add in approximate line up, not you know, with a sense of, oh, it's not in the exact same place and I don't like it, therefore I'm just going to build in a little more layering so that these fronds you can reposition and add in other places if you feel like you want a little bit more detail. So I'm quite enjoying the subtlety of that, and since there's those two basically are, they're really a matching pair, aren't they? So what I might do is take the same image, but this time I want to flip it, so I want the stem coming in the other direction. So I'm just going to wipe off the ink I've got on this side and make sure it's dry enough that it's not going to disrupt my ink. So now if I want to have the same stem but leaning in the other direction, just turn the stencil over and away I go with the mirror image. And I think I'll go with the same colour tone for now. I may in the long run want to put some embossing powder over this as well, which we can always do by re-inking. The thing with a stencil is it's usually fairly easy to reposition and land up back in the same place so that you can add more detail, or indeed so that you can ink up and then use embossing powder to give a little more definition to what you're playing with. This walnut stain is the darker brown that I'm using here, so Rusty Hinge and walnut stain so far. There's a there's a simplicity to that I'm enjoying quite a lot. Let's have a go with the other stem as well, and I might try with, so the Distress Oxides are of course opaque, which means that they'll cover somewhat better. They should give you a slightly more present stem. And I think I'm going to go with I've got pumice stone and frayed burlap here, and they're quite pale, which is why I'm not convinced that they're going to cover what's going on below, but I'm going to give them a go. I can always build more layers of colour afterwards. It's trickier to take colour away. So always start light, and you can always add more. So I'm going to start with quite a subtle pumice stone, which as an oxide is a very, very pale ink. So that's a very subtle subliminal kind of a thing, but I do love that chalky oxide look against there. So I'm going to stick to the oxides, I'm going to reposition that stem, and I'm going to take in a bit of frayed burlap to see if I can just get a bit more presence. There's the top, just looking for that to line it up. Because the inking is quite subtle, it might take a little bit of wiggling before I can see that that's lined up. So I'm going to end up probably with some accidental stencil bumping. So stencil bumping is a lovely thing where you deliberately reposition the stencil so it's not quite in the same place, and you can create a kind of shadowed effect. It's not quite what I'm after just yet. Can't remember the angle I had it at. I can see those three. I'm trying to line those three up with that, and I can get that. There they are. You see them suddenly flip into focus. But this is now not quite in the right place. That's interesting. Let's try lining up that and that. Oh, this one might be the one to line up. There we go. I can see that one quite clearly against the paler background. There we are. Got that stem. Let's have a look what we've got here. Over you go. The other way, that way, rotating. Yes, I see it. That suddenly flicked into focus at the same time as this. So we're pretty much there. Let's add that as a layer of frayed burlap, which is it's kind of a substantially more present colour than the pumice stone. I mean, I love that pale pumice stone, and I may do some pumice stone splattering in a minute because it's very enjoyable. Oh, there you go. So that's beautifully visible. Yep, I enjoy that. Enjoying that a lot. Let's give that a little clean so that I can again flip this over to create a mirror image. So I'm really working with those ideas I often mention about repetition and variation, just the visual poetry of the same image but in a slightly different position, or in this case a mirror image reverse. I'm going to take it quite high up because, as before, I can add some more. I angle it slightly differently, so let's take it slightly more upright on this side. I'm going to go straight for the frayed burlap because although I loved the pumice stone, it was really a bit too subtle against the background. If I use the pumice stone on a slightly less present background, then that's going to make me very happy sometime very soon. So again, I think what I'm going to do here is add a little bit more, some more of these fronds further down, so sort of make them fit with that background stem, and add a little more detailing further down here. I think I want quite a nice substantial one there. There we go. Oh look, and I managed to rub on there as well, which I didn't really mean to do, so I'm just going to lighten it a little bit. I won't be able to get rid of it entirely, but I can soften it. So the oxide inks will get their lovely oxide chalky effect if you spritz them with some water, but at the moment I want the full inkiness of that. I think I don't want to go for that oxidization. And now I think the final thing might be to put another little touch of this one coming up in maybe the dark walnut stain again from the bottom here. And again, this is not focal image yet. This is still creating background meadow feelings. So I'm absolutely fine with that being sort of almost subliminal down there. Let's clean that again so that I can flip and just come up from the bottom here. So this is really in the foreground. So something a little darker can often give you that sense of something that's right in the foreground. Paler colours will disappear off into the distance, and something in the foreground. So having said that, I think what we might do is go even for something a little darker on those front two. So this is Scorched Timber, fabulously deeply pigmented distress ink, really, really powerful and strong, almost black, but actually it's a really cool, and by cool I don't mean groovy, I mean cool as in colour temperature, brown. So I'm just going to add a little bit of extra detailing with that really dark. Oh, that's good. That's really good. Let's take that away. Of course, if you've spritzed on here and you want to add a little bit of flipping over here, just to create a little imprint of grassiness down in that corner. There may have been enough pigment there to do that, given it's Scorched Timber. Yeah, just a little impression of those grassy leaves in there. That makes me quite happy. Might play with that again in a second. Good. What I was really doing was cleaning this side of the stencil. Be a little gentle as you're wiping, because some of these cuts are quite delicate. That's deliberately so, because I want that lovely soft grassiness. So again, just because this one's down in the foreground and it's across that very busy background, I'm just going to try to add a little more weight and heft to it using that Scorched Timber. And there we've got those lovely tangled grasses. I'm really enjoying that detailing. So I think I want, oh, maybe I can intensify this right now. Was that side? Oh no, it's that side, look. That's no good. So that's the other way around. Is there another of these that's quite pale that I could do that on? Or maybe we just do it further up. Oh look, you get out of the way. I'm going to have that stem coming in from there. And again, it's going to be subtle, but it's going to be so worth it. So those mop-ups are just giving me a little bit of extra texture on a print that was a little bit dull, and kind of in between you can see those little impressions of grassiness. So wiping off. What was I just thinking? Oh, I was thinking of doing just a little bit of shading using that Scorched Timber. So you can see now that I can see that outline more clearly. You can spot the moment when it pops into focus and you know you're in the right place to do a little bit of extra inking. So I'm just adding in places a little bit extra to give me that sense of texture, sense of a bit more detail. Flipping over, lining up, catch that moment when it all suddenly just pops into focus. There it is, little swivel at the bottom. And again, just adding a little touch here and there to give me that sense of that stem. Yeah, see, and there it wasn't quite lined up. Absolutely fine with that. It's just giving me more grassiness in that background. I'm pausing because I need just a minute to have a look at this. I really love that frayed burlap on there. I would quite like, well no, I quite like that this one they're very clear on and this one they're much subtler on, because the background is so much more present. I'm wondering about some stamping. I don't know that I want to go as far as a grassy stem for stamping. I pulled out some teasels because I thought they were good for meadows. I pulled out this lovely umbel because that's always a nice thing. If I'm going to do that, I think it's going to need quite a lot of presence. So it might be a question of embossing it in primary bark. Maybe what I want is a little bit of detail stamping in the background, maybe some texty stuff. I'm going to have a little think and maybe pull out some stamps to have a play with. Back in a sec. I think I've decided I'm in the mood for a little bit of Shakespeare. One of my all-time favourite stamps, obviously because it's very much connected to the words half of my life. All that work I did in the theatre for years with Shakespeare. I think it might be quite nice to stamp in an archival, just in case things are going to go on walkabout with some splattering in a minute, and I want to keep this nice and firm. I can't remember what card this is on. It feels a little bit textured on the front, so it won't be a perfect stamping, but I think what it will be is quite a nice aged weathered sort of a stamping. Might as well kill two birds with one stone, and I'm gonna hit both of these at the same time with half and half. So I know I've got the whole of William Shakespeare and his works, comedies, tragedies and histories, going across both of those. So yeah, it's just some simple text in the background. So having got one complete stamping, I'm now going to do a little bit of rolling stamping, just adding to that detail in the background. There he is, Shakespeare, 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 but subtly and subliminally, so that I know what that's saying. It won't immediately be apparent probably to everybody, unless they're intimately acquainted with the first folio, which I don't expect of anyone. There we are. I'm quite enjoying that double, ear, ear, r. So let's echo it over here. Yes, I really like that you've got all these sort of partial words, and what they do is they tantalize the eye, because our brains love to make sense of what they're seeing. So when they see these sort of partial moments, there's a desire in the brain to know more. So it attracts the attention, it holds the attention. The brain wants to come and play, wants to come and find out what's going on there. I'm just wondering about putting a little bit up in the sky, in which case I might do it tone on tone. So rather than going with brown up there, I might go for something faded jeans-ish. That's going to mean not stamping in Archival, but maybe that's okay. Maybe that's okay. Let's go with a faded jeans stamping up here. It may not show up very much. Oh, actually, maybe I don't want it on the grid. Maybe I want to be doing peeling again. So I've got the second half of his name going on quite a lot here. So what I might try for is the first half of his name up here. Yeah, see, I like that. I like the subtlety of that. I like, again, the sort of subliminal presence as opposed to something full on. And again, we've got Shakespeare going across there. Oh, I've done yeah. I said it was going to be the first half of his name, and of course the stamp is reversed. It's the second half. It's all good, because what we've got now is that lovely echo coming down this side and that lovely echo coming down that side. I'll put a little bit there and a little bit there. And that's still leaving us these open spaces in either corner. And just noticing, when I'm always talking about repetition and variation, what it means is that as things communicate with one another, where they are in relation to each other changes. So this looks one way, this way round. If I switch the position, you get a whole different meadowscape with the space in the center. So one of the reasons I love working in pairs and trios and quartets is that those changes of position give you a whole new perspective on things. So in one place we've got a clump in the center with things heading outwards, and here we've got a sort of framing effect with things coming inwards. I'm really enjoying that. So the next steps, whatever they are going to be quite simple. I don't think I want too much more going on. What I am quite tempted by is the idea of some, this is back to the Distress Oxide Pumice stone, just a little bit of spatter. So it's light already in its unwatery state, and as soon as you add water, of course, you get an even cloudier look. And I'm just using that to add a little bit more detail. There is going to be some white spatter as well, no question, because that sort of summery, dusty, polleny look. But I think there's something nice about this layer of the pumice stone, which has just got that softer, warmer, spattered look. It's quite nice. I'm just using it to break up some of those places where the background is maybe less interesting or less eye-catching. Grand. And it might be time to do a little bit of white spatter right now, I think, before things progress any further. So this is my almost empty snowflake fresco chalk acrylic. Oh, maybe it would be better, because this is now very watery in here, because I dipped the brush in and out of here. in a wet state, maybe it would be better to use some of this Dr. Martens bleed proof white, which I'll use in as undiluted a form as possible, because then that won't pick up the colours from underneath. A very watery fresco dilution will still somewhat pick up colours from the inks underneath it and not stay white. The bleed proof white, the whole point is it's intended to be bleed proof, and so those colours from below shouldn't come up and join in. Fresco paint, when it's undiluted, will absolutely not bleed into the colours. You'll get opaque white paint. But obviously if I'm spattering it, I need to put a little bit of water in to get the consistency that will spatter nicely in the way that I want it to. So you're always going to be slightly subject to the pigments from underneath seeping into the watery mix. Whereas with the bleed proof white, hopefully what we'll get is something that stays put. Is that a little bit of dried ink going on there? I'm now deliberately aiming at the grasses because I've noticed I really like it on those grassy stems. This may be almost enough for me. I'm just looking at all this lovely inkiness here and looking for a piece of paper to mop it up onto. What have we got nearby? Nothing. Oh look, a little bit of my green card. Ooh, look at that. Let's have all of that. That's going to be fun to stamp on, stamp some words on, whatever it might be, future project. Leave that somewhere to dry. Okay, let's have another look at these and just see what else. It might be as simple as some rusty wire, or it might involve, hello. I'm not sure I want to go for dimensional flowers this time around, because I'm enjoying my grassy stems rather a lot. I don't think I want to go for the umble stamping. Okay, so I'm eliminating things here rather than, oh look, there's a bit of rusty wire. Maybe it's as simple as that. A little bit of rusty wire. I've got more rusty wire. I can find some more rusty wire. There isn't any on the table, but I've got plenty tucked away in the stash. Or it might be twine. Have I got some twine I could have a look at? Again, I can fetch some twine. Might be that, and maybe just a little Muse token or something, a little metallic thing attached. You can see I've got the bark, but I think that's too much and too wintry. Good, rusty wire and metal bits. I'll be right back. So I've got some rusty wire, I've got some Muse tokens, I've got the Lost Shadow Distress Crayon, which I'm just going to rub upright over the word on that Muse token and just around over the raised border, so that that wonderful comes slightly into focus. Using Lost Shadow because I didn't want to go all the way to picket fence. I didn't want to go completely white. Just wanted something pale that'll just highlight those words a little bit. Genuine, wonderful. So I think the height of the rusty wire is going to be slightly different on these. There I want it acknowledging that sort of horizon line. Here the horizon lines are much softer, more subliminal thing, so I think I can afford to go a little lower, just again so that we get that balancing act, the variation of position. And the other thought I had while I was digging around for things was that maybe I'd quite like to mount these with a frame, in which case I need to look at that, because when I put the rusty wire on will be determined by whether they've got a frame as well. I think the frame is quite good, isn't it? Because it just lightens everything up. Great, so do I want the wire going around the frame as well? Yes, I think I probably do. So we're going to glue them down first, and probably I'll just use some of this. You can use decoupage glue, you can use whatever acrylic glues you've got. I just always have this one on the desk so it's easy to get hold of. And yeah, rather than getting a brush out and washing the brush with a soft glue, I find this one is the one I reach for. But you may prefer to use a soft glue like the collage medium, something like that. To me, this is, it's habitual as much as anything else, really, isn't it? Our preferences for things like glues and paints and makes of gesso. Makes of gesso vary quite a lot in terms of their precise colour tone, in terms of their density. And if you experiment over time, as I have over the last, how long, 10, 12 years, you discover you have preferences, favourites. But there's absolutely no reason your favourite should be the same as my favourite. In fact, it shouldn't, because you're not the same person as me. So we should all have different preferences as to colours, as to precise products, as to precise techniques. That's part of the journey, is discovering the particular things which bring you joy, which are unlikely to be exactly the same as the particular things which bring other people joy. Because each of us comes to this with our own self, our own memories, our own joys, our own creative impulses. And listening into those creative impulses is one of the great lessons, I think. To just try and listen in and see which are the things which really make your heart sing, which are the things that are fun to play with, but then you move on, and which are the things that you come back to again and again and again and again. And for me, that's blues and browns and rust. I've been having great joy exploring with brighter, bolder colours lately, and of course when it comes to flowers you might want brighter, bolder colours involved. So I'm just debating. I could attach that directly, as you see, just sliding it onto the rusty wire, but if I want it to hang more freely, then what I need is a little jump ring. Got a whole collection of jump rings in here. Usually it's easiest to get them out with a little tweezer. Find the one I want. So that's quite a large size one. I don't think I want that. I want a littler one than that, where all the little ones tend to fall to the bottom. Don't want it silver. I'm gonna have to go fishing. What have we got here? There. Oh no, that's silver again. Ha! Back in. Oops. Oh, away it goes. Right. I may. You don't need to see me dig through here for little bronze or gold jump rings. No, that's silver again. Well, I may have to colour some with some alcohol ink, or I may be able to find myself some little dark ones. When I've located them, I shall return. It appears that I've only got silver little ones, or at least I got bored with looking. So I've got some mushroom alcohol ink. I'm just going to give these a little drop of alcohol ink. If you're colouring metal, alcohol ink is just the simplest way to get the job done, and mushroom does a great job of just vintaging things up. So that's going to be there, that's going to be there. I need to be high enough up so that this can hang, mustn't forget that. And it's going to be on a jump ring now, so it'll need to be a little higher altogether. So maybe I do go all the way to the horizon line on this one. That's quite nice. So this is a little higher up, this is a little higher up. Grand. That's probably dry enough to use now. Alcohol ink dries in seconds in the air. I may end up with a little bit on my fingertips, but I'm kind of fine with that. So this can now just be folded back. If you like, you can use a little bit of tape to secure it around the back, but for the most part, I'm generally pretty happy just leaving it like so. I mean, if you're giving it as a gift to somebody, then yes, by all means, protect their fingertips by sealing that in with a little bit of tape of any kind, design tape, masking tape, or whatever it might be. So jump ring just needs a little twist to open it up. I don't know whether you can see that, but I'm aware that many or most of you will have experienced jump rings. Or if not, I'm sure there are tutorials on YouTube where people have taken the trouble to focus in fully on their jump ring. And then I'm just going to loop that around the wire. And then you just tweezer that, or fold that back together to seal up the jump ring again. Pair of tweezers, pair of pliers can be useful. So you can either leave that sewing in completely freely, or what I very often do, if it's in a position and I like the position, is I'll just put a little dot of something like this heavy gel, glue just behind here to just say, yeah, you're pretending to dangle, but really what you're doing is staying where I want you. There, that'll dry clear. So even if you can see it behind there at the moment, don't worry. That's just going to give you that security that that's going nowhere. So same process, just bending these round behind. This piece is only just long enough because it just happened to be on the desk, so I haven't cut this one specially. So that's going to be just getting it to just fit. Serendipity. When that happens, I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. I'm just going to take advantage and use that as my wire for this tag. And again, just around the rusty wire, and then just pinching the ends of that jump ring together again. It's a little bit fiddly, but it's worth it. And again, I've kept this open, so a little dot of this glue just at the base of that Muse token, just to say, yeah, I'd rather you didn't go walkabout, thanks. I'd rather you didn't dangle too freely. As I've been using that Distress crayon on there has slightly rubbed off. That's kind of predictable. That will happen. And since it has, I'm sort of looking at them and wondering whether I want to do it therefore with just a little bit of paint, maybe a little touch of something blue, a bluish. So here's weathered wood, distress paint. And what I might do is just put a dot of that onto the mat here. And then just with my finger pad, I don't know why I always use my third finger, but I do. I don't want too much because I don't want it going down into the gaps between the letters. I'm just very gently rubbing that onto there. And I don't mind that I get a little bit extra. Very gently onto there. And you can see that's highlighted that beautifully. And because it's got that blue-grey tone, it's kind of reflecting the sky up there. If I did want to get rid of that little bit, just a little cotton bud or something to just fish out that extra bit of colour. If it's bothering you, you can see I'm giving it a go. That's mostly to show you it's not bothering me terribly much. I'm leaving it there. I'm now, because this is here, now wondering about maybe a little spatter of that. Just to use it up, you know. Waste not, want not. And that is quite pretty. Just as an extra bit of layered spatter. I think that might be it for these tags. I think that might be everything that's needed. Obviously some twine in the top. Obviously some twine in the top. But then I'll dive in for a close-up so you can have a look at all those textures, all those lovely layered grasses into that meadow. I hope you've enjoyed today's tag time. If you have, leave me a thumbs up. Comments or questions down below are always welcome. Always a joy to interact with you on this creative journey. And as always, I'll list as many relevant ingredients below as I can remember and link to the backgrounds video so that you can go and check out gel printing with the Distress inks. Thanks so much for your company and happy crafting all.